Dr. Marcus Reed wiped the sweat from his brow as he calibrated the quantum microscope for the fifth time that morning. The orbital research station Kepler-7 maintained perfect climate control, but his nervousness about working alongside the Vereen delegation had his palms clammy and his heart racing. 6 months into the unprecedented human-alien cultural exchange program, and he still felt like he was stumbling through a diplomatic minefield every time he entered the shared laboratory. The Vereen weren't what he'd expected from the briefings. Popular human media had painted aliens as either monstrous creatures or impossibly beautiful beings with multiple arms and exotic features. Sayalani of the Vereen was neither. She was graceful in a way that seemed almost ethereal, with luminescent, pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly under the laboratory's harsh lighting. Her body was elegantly humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, 5 delicate fingers on each hand. Yet there was something otherworldly in the way she moved, as if she were dancing to music only she could hear. "Dr. Reed," came a voice like wind chimes, melodic and precise. Marcus turned to see Sayalani approaching his workstation, her silver hair flowing behind her like liquid starlight. Her eyes were the color of deep ocean, vast and somehow ancient, despite her apparent youth. "Please, just Marcus," he said, offering what he hoped was a welcoming smile. After 6 months of working in adjacent labs, she still maintained the formal distance that seemed to be second nature to her people. "Marcus," she repeated, the name sounding almost musical in her accent. "I require access to the neural pattern analyzer. My research into the consciousness matrices of the Kepler-7b organisms has reached a critical phase." Marcus stepped aside, watching as she began her work with fluid precision. Everything Sayalani did seemed choreographed, as if she were following some internal rhythm he couldn't perceive. The Vereen were known for their telepathic abilities and emotional restraint, but there was something about her that suggested depths beneath the serene surface. "Finding anything interesting?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious about her work. Sayalani's hands paused over the controls, and for a moment her composed expression seemed to flicker. "The organisms exhibit a form of collective emotional resonance that parallels certain aspects of Vereen telepathic networks. It is, unexpected." Marcus leaned closer, intrigued by the subtle change in her tone. "Collective emotional resonance? Like they're sharing feelings across space?" "In a manner of speaking, yes." Sayalani's fingers resumed their delicate work. "They respond to each other's biorhythmic fluctuations across vast distances, creating a web of shared experience. It challenges our understanding of consciousness as an individual phenomenon." There was something in her voice, a note of wonder that broke through her usual controlled demeanor. Marcus found himself studying her profile, noting the way her luminescent skin seemed to pulse slightly as if responding to her emotional state. "That's incredible," Marcus said, pulling up a chair beside her. "In human neuroscience, we're just beginning to understand how mirror neurons create empathy between individuals, but nothing like what you're describing." For the first time since he'd known her, Sayalani turned to look directly at him, her ocean-deep eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his breath catch. "You find our telepathic abilities intriguing rather than threatening?" Marcus blinked in surprise. "Threatening? Why would I find them threatening? Many humans express fear of mental intrusion. Your psychological profiles indicate a strong preference for mental privacy." Her voice was carefully neutral, but Marcus caught something underneath. Uncertainty, perhaps even hurt. "Well, I'm not most humans," Marcus said with a laugh. "Besides, you've never tried to read my thoughts without asking, have you?" "Never." The response was immediate and fervent. "Such an act would be an unforgivable violation among my people. Consent is sacred in all telepathic contact." Marcus found himself studying Sayalani's face, noting the way her skin's luminescence seemed to dim slightly when she spoke of violation. There was a story there, cultural depths he couldn't fathom. She was brilliant, reserved, and carried herself with a grace that spoke of traditions stretching back millennia. "Sayalani," he said softly, testing the boundaries of their formal relationship. "Would you mind if I asked you something personal?" Her hands stilled completely over the analyzer. "Controls. The soft glow of her skin seemed to pulse once like a heartbeat made visible. You may ask. I cannot promise I will answer. What's it like? The telepathy, I mean. What's it like to truly connect with another mind? The silence that followed seemed to stretch across the vastness of space itself. Marcus could hear the gentle hum of the station's life support systems, the distant murmur of other researchers in adjacent labs, but between them, there was only charged quiet. When Sayalani finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. It is like... She paused as if searching for words in a language that couldn't contain the concept. Imagine if you could feel the warmth of another's soul touching yours. Imagine knowing, truly knowing that you are not alone in the universe. The raw longing in her voice made Marcus's chest tighten. For a moment, the composed, distant researcher was gone, replaced by someone achingly vulnerable. It sounds beautiful, Marcus said quietly. Sayalani's luminescent skin pulsed brighter for just an instant before dimming back to its usual soft glow. Perhaps someday, Marcus Reed, you will understand. As she returned to her work, Marcus felt something shift in the space between them, the first crack in the wall of formal distance that had separated them for 6 months. 3 weeks later, Marcus found himself staying late in the laboratory more often than he cared to admit. It wasn't just dedication to his research on the Kepler-7b organisms, though that was certainly part of it. The truth was he discovered that Sayalani also worked late into the station's artificial night cycle, and their evening conversations had become the highlight of his days. Tonight, she was hunched over a crystalline sample, her luminescent skin casting a soft blue glow across her workspace. The overhead lights had been dimmed to simulate nighttime, giving the lab an intimate atmosphere that made their conversations feel more personal, more real. The neural pathways are unlike anything in our databases, Sayalani murmured, more to herself than to him. Her voice held a note of frustrated fascination that Marcus had learned to recognize. Maybe that's because we're thinking about it wrong, Marcus said, rolling his chair closer to her station. What if these organisms don't think the way either of our species do? Sayalani looked up, her ocean-deep eyes meeting his. Explain. Well, humans think in linear patterns, building from one thought to the next. From what I understand about Vereen, telepathy, you think in emotional harmonics, feeling your way through problems rather than reasoning through them. Marcus gestured at the sample. But what if these creatures think in something else entirely? Spatial dimensions maybe, or temporal loops? For a moment, Sayalani's composed mask slipped entirely, replaced by genuine excitement. Temporal, cognitive, loops, she breathed. Processing information not in sequence but in recursive patterns that fold back on themselves. Exactly. Marcus leaned forward, caught up in the thrill of discovery. That would explain why their neural firing patterns seem random to us. We're looking for A to B thinking, but they might be processing A to Z to M to A. Sayalani's skin brightened perceptibly, the luminescence spreading from her face down, her neck in patterns Marcus was beginning to recognize as signs of intense emotion. You see patterns that even our telepathic analysis missed, she said softly. How do you do that? Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. I don't know. Maybe because I'm not looking for what I expect to find? They worked together through the artificial night, mapping the organism's neural patterns with a combination of human intuition and Vereen telepathic sensitivity. Around what would have been 2 a.m. Earth time, Sayalani suddenly straightened from her microscope. Marcus, she said hesitantly, would you like to experience how we perceive these patterns? I could share the impression with you. Telepathically. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. In 6 months of working together, Sayalani had never offered direct telepathic contact. Is that allowed? I mean, culturally? Sayalani's skin dimmed slightly. It is a minor sharing only, like showing someone a photograph rather than deeper communion. But if it makes you uncomfortable, no, Marcus said quickly. I'd be honored. Sayalani moved her chair closer, close enough that Marcus could feel the warmth radiating from her luminescent skin. Close your eyes, she whispered, and try to remain open. Marcus felt her fingertips brush against his temples, cool and impossibly soft. For a moment, nothing happened. Then gradually he began to sense something that wasn't quite sound, wasn't quite light, but somehow contained elements of both. The neural patterns of the organisms bloomed in his mind like music made visible, swirling in harmonious spirals that pulsed with life and consciousness. But beneath that, he sensed something else, Selani's own thoughts, her wonder at the patterns, her careful control as she shared only what was safe to share, and threading through it all, almost hidden beneath the scientific marvel they were experiencing together, was something warmer, more personal, a flutter of affection, attraction. The sensation was gone before Marcus could identify it clearly. When Selani pulled back, Marcus opened his eyes to find her watching him intently, her skin now glowing with a soft pink undertone he'd never seen before. That was incredible, Marcus breathed. I had no idea telepathic sharing could be so beautiful. It is different with each mind, Selani said quietly. Some feel cold, analytical, others burn with chaotic emotion. But you, she paused, as if searching for words. Your mind feels like summer rain, warm, refreshing, full of unexpected patterns. The intimate comparison hung between them, charged with meaning Marcus didn't fully understand. He found himself studying her face, noting the way her silver hair caught the lab's dim lighting, the graceful curve of her neck, the way her luminescent skin seemed to pulse with each heartbeat. Selani, he said softly, would you like to experience human music sometime? I mean, not telepathically, just listening, together. Her skin brightened, the pink undertones becoming more pronounced. I would find that agreeable. As the weeks passed, their late-night sessions became a ritual. They would work on their respective research, then share discoveries, cultural insights, and gradually more personal thoughts. Marcus learned that Selani had left behind a prestigious research position on the Virine homeworld to join the exchange program, driven by curiosity about other forms of consciousness. Selani learned that Marcus had volunteered for the program, despite family pressure to pursue a safer career, drawn by the possibility of expanding humanity's understanding of life itself. One evening, as they listened to a piece of human classical music, Debussy's Clair de Lune, Selani closed her eyes and let her natural luminescence pulse in rhythm with the melody. Your music creates patterns of emotion, she murmured, like paintings made of feeling. And your light creates patterns of beauty, Marcus replied without thinking. Like watching your soul dance. Selani's eyes opened, meeting his, with an intensity that made his breath catch. The air between them seemed to shimmer with possibility, and Marcus felt his heart hammering against his ribs. Selani, he said, his voice rougher than intended. I know this might sound crazy, and I know our species barely understand each other, but... He took a deep breath. Would you like to go on a date with me? The words hung in the air like a question posed to the universe itself. Selani's luminescence flickered once, twice, then began to pulse in a pattern Marcus had never seen before. Rapid, intense, almost urgent. The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of two worlds, two species, and the fragile hope growing in Marcus's chest. The silence that followed Marcus's question seemed to stretch across galaxies. Selani's luminescent skin pulsed in rapid, complex patterns, blues and purples and silver cascading across her face and arms like aurora made flesh. Her ocean deep, eyes widened, and for a moment Marcus thought he saw something that looked almost like fear. Then, to his complete amazement, Selani slid from her chair and knelt before him, her head bowed in what was unmistakably a formal pose. Marcus Reed of Earth, she said, her voice carrying a ceremonial weight he'd never heard before. I offer you the Kalanthara, the bond of souls, the joining of minds, the unity that transcends flesh and species, and the vast emptiness between stars. Marcus stared at her, his mind struggling to process what was happening. "Selani, what?" She looked up at him, and he saw tears, actual tears, glistening in her alien eyes. "Among my people, when one asks for what you call dating, it is understood as a request for the deepest possible connection. The Kalanthara is offered only once in a Virene's lifetime. It is—" She paused, searching for words. "It is what you might call marriage, but deeper. It is the permanent melding of two consciousness, two souls becoming one while remaining two." The lab suddenly felt like it was spinning around Marcus. Sayalani, I didn't know. I was just asking if you wanted to spend time together, maybe, share a meal, get to know each other better." Ceylani's luminescence dimmed, her skin fading to a pale, almost translucent blue. "Then I have misunderstood. I apologize for—" "No," Marcus said quickly, dropping from his chair to kneel beside her. "Don't apologize. I'm the one who didn't understand what I was asking, but Selani—" He reached out, hovering his hand near hers without quite touching. "Tell me what this means. Really means." Selani's skin flickered with faint patterns of gold and silver. "The Kalanthara is the sacred bond between two minds. When it is formed, we share not just thoughts and emotions, but memories, dreams, the very essence of who we are. It cannot be broken except by death. It means that your joys become my joys, your sorrows become my sorrows. Your mind becomes a second home for my soul." Marcus felt his heart thundering in his chest. "And you're offering this to me? After 6 months of working together?" "I have been drawn to your mind since our first conversation," Ceylani admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your thoughts are unlike any I have encountered. Warm, creative, filled with wonder at the universe. When you offered to share experiences with me, to learn about my culture, to see beauty in what others fear—" She paused, her skin brightening slightly. "I began to hope that perhaps the barriers between our species were not insurmountable." Marcus sat back on his heels, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what she was offering. "But Ceylani, we barely know each other. I mean, we work together, we've shared music and conversations, but—" "You do not understand," Ceylani interrupted gently. "For the past weeks, every moment we spent together, I was reading the edges of your thoughts. Not intruding, never that, but sensing the emotional resonance around them. I know the kindness in your heart, the genuine curiosity that drives you, the way you see wonder in the smallest discoveries. I know that you chose this assignment not for glory or advancement, but because you truly wanted to understand other forms of life." She reached out, her fingertips barely brushing against his. Even that light contact sent a shock of sensation through Marcus, not just physical but something deeper, as if her emotions were bleeding into his. "I know that you dream of your sister's children back on Earth," she continued, "and that you send them recordings of the stars because you want them to feel wonder at the universe. I know that you sometimes lie awake at night, feeling small beneath the vastness of space, but that instead of despair, it fills you with determination to understand your place in it all." Marcus stared at her, shaken by the accuracy of her observations. "How could you know all that?" "Because minds in harmony create resonance," Selani said softly, "and ours have been in harmony for weeks now, even without the formal bond. The Kalanthara would simply make official what already exists between us." Marcus felt tears pricking at his own eyes. The enormity of what she was offering, what she was asking, crashed over him like a wave. This wasn't a casual dinner date or a few stolen kisses in a maintenance corridor. This was a commitment that would reshape the very foundations of who he was. "Selani," he said carefully, "what would this mean for us? Practically, I mean. Would I become telepathic? Would you become more human? How would it work?" "You would gain limited telepathic ability, enough to share the bond but not to read others without training. I would become more emotionally expressive, more connected to physical sensation. We would remain ourselves, but we would also become something new, something neither fully human nor fully Virene." "And if I said yes?" Marcus asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. What would happen next? Celani's skin brightened to a warm gold, hope flickering across her features like candlelight. The bonding ritual requires 3 days of preparation, mental exercises to align our consciousness. Then, she paused, a faint blush of pink spreading across her cheeks. Then we would join mind and body in the most intimate sharing possible between sentient beings. The implications of her words sent heat rushing through Marcus's body. The idea of truly knowing another person, of being known in return, was both terrifying and exhilarating. "This is a lot to process," Marcus said honestly. I came to work tonight thinking I might ask a colleague out for coffee, and instead I'm being offered a soul bond with someone from another world. I understand if it is too much, Celani said, starting to rise from her kneeling position. "Perhaps I should." Marcus caught her hand, stopping her. The contact sent another jolt of sensation through both of them, and he saw her skin flare bright with surprise and something that looked like desire. "I didn't say I wasn't interested," Marcus said quietly. "I said it was a lot to process. Give me tonight to think about it. This is the biggest decision either of us will ever make." Celani nodded, her skin settling into a soft, steady glow. "Of course, but Marcus, know that regardless of your answer, these weeks we have shared have been the most meaningful of my existence." As they parted ways that night, Marcus felt the weight of 2 civilizations resting on his shoulders and the even heavier weight of a love that might just be strong enough to bridge the gap between worlds. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He paced his quarters aboard Kepler-7, staring out at the stars and trying to wrap his mind around what Celani had offered him. By morning, he knew his answer, though the certainty of it terrified him. He found Celani in the observation deck during what would have been dawn on Earth, standing before the massive viewport that showed the planet Kepler-7b rotating slowly below them. Her luminescent skin was dim, almost gray, and she seemed smaller somehow, more fragile than he'd ever seen her. "I've been thinking," Marcus said quietly, moving to stand beside her. Celani didn't turn to look at him. "And?" "I keep coming back to something you said yesterday, about minds in harmony." Marcus placed his hand on the viewport, fingers spread against the cool transparent steel. "I've felt it too, you know. These past weeks sometimes I'll be working on a problem and suddenly I'll know the answer, but it won't feel like my answer. It'll feel like someone else's insight flowing through me." Now Celani did turn, her skin brightening slightly. "You have been unconsciously receptive to telepathic impression. It is rare in humans, but not unknown. And last night when you barely touched my hand, I could feel your emotions, your hope, your fear, your—" He paused, heat rising in his cheeks. "Your attraction to me." Celani's skin flushed a deep rose color. "Yes. The barriers between us have been dissolving naturally. The formal bond would simply complete what has already begun." Marcus turned to face her fully. "Then yes, Celani of the Virene, I accept your Kalanthara." The transformation in Celani was immediate and breathtaking. Her skin exploded with color, gold and silver and brilliant blue cascading across her in waves of pure joy. She threw her arms around him, and Marcus felt a rush of emotion that wasn't entirely his own. Relief, happiness, love, and underneath it all, a profound sense of rightness, as if the universe itself was sighing in satisfaction. "Are you certain?" Celani whispered against his ear. "There is no shame in changing your mind. This bond cannot be undone." "I'm terrified," Marcus admitted, holding her closer. "But I've never been more certain of anything in my life." The 3 days of preparation that followed were unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Celani guided him through Virene meditation techniques, teaching him to quiet his conscious mind and become aware of the deeper currents of thought and emotion that flowed beneath surface awareness. "Your mind is like a river," she explained, during one session, her fingers resting lightly on his temples. "Most humans live only on the surface, aware only of the rushing water. But beneath there are deeper currents, older and more powerful. The bond requires us to dive deep, to meet each other in those hidden places. As his telepathic sensitivity increased, Marcus began to perceive Ceylani in ways that left him breathless. He could feel the ancient sadness she carried, the loneliness of being one of the few Vereen willing to reach across the species divide. He sensed her fierce intelligence, her passionate curiosity about the universe, and threading through it all, a growing love for him that made his heart ache with its intensity. On the third night, as the formal bonding ritual approached, they sat together in Marcus's quarters, sharing a simple meal and trying to calm their nerves. "Are you afraid?" Ceylani asked, her skin pulsing with soft, nervous patterns. "Yes," Marcus said honestly, "but not of you. I'm afraid of losing myself, of becoming someone I don't recognize." Ceylani reached across the small table and took his hands in hers. The contact sent familiar shivers of sensation through both of them. "You will not lose yourself. You will discover yourself. The bond does not erase who we are. It reveals who we truly are, beneath all our fears and defenses." When the time came, they moved to the observation deck they had claimed as their own. Ceylani had prepared the space with soft lighting and Vereen ceremonial crystals that hummed with harmonic frequencies. She wore a flowing garment that seemed to be made of light itself, shifting and shimmering with every movement. "The ritual is simple," she explained, her voice carrying the weight of ceremony. "We join hands, we open our minds completely, and we choose to become one while remaining two." Marcus felt his heart hammering as they knelt facing each other, hands clasped between them. "What will it feel like?" "Like coming home," Ceylani whispered. She closed her eyes and began to hum, a sound that seemed to resonate in Marcus's bones. Gradually he felt his conscious barriers dissolving, his awareness expanding beyond the boundaries of his own skull. And then suddenly Ceylani was there, not just near him but with him, in him, around him. Her memories flooded through him, growing up on a world of crystal spires and floating cities. The first time she felt the touch of another mind. Her decision to leave everything familiar and journey to the stars. He felt her wonder at their first meeting, her growing fascination with his different way of thinking, the moment she realized she was falling in love with an alien being. In return, his memories flowed into her. Childhood summers on Earth, the day he decided to become a xenobiologist, the loneliness of space travel, the shock of finding someone who understood him completely despite coming from another world. But beyond memories, beyond thoughts, was something deeper. The core of who they were, the essential spark that made them themselves, touched and mingled and danced together like binary stars locked in eternal orbit. When physical awareness returned, Marcus found himself lying beside Ceylani on the soft floor, their bodies intertwined, her luminescent skin painting patterns of light across both their forms. The connection between their minds remained, a constant warm presence that felt as natural as breathing. "How do you feel?" Ceylani whispered, her lips brushing against his neck. Marcus explored the new landscape of his consciousness, marveling at the way he could sense her emotions as clearly as his own, the way her thoughts harmonized with his without overwhelming them. "Complete," he said finally, "like I've been missing half of myself my entire life and didn't know it." Ceylani lifted her head to look at him, her eyes bright with tears of joy. "The bond is perfect. We are one, my beloved. We are one." As they made love for the first time, Marcus experienced intimacy on levels he hadn't known existed. Every caress was felt by both of them, every sensation shared and amplified through their psychic connection. It was overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying and perfect all at once. Afterward, as they lay entwined beneath the stars, Marcus marveled at the way their thoughts flowed together like streams converging into a river. He was still himself, but he was also more than himself, part of something larger and more wonderful than he had ever imagined possible. "What happens now?" he asked, stroking Ceylani's luminescent hair. "Now we face the universe together," she replied, her mind voice as clear in his thoughts as her spoken words. "Whatever comes, we are no longer alone." The news of the first successful human-Verine soul bond spread through both civilizations like wildfire, igniting reactions that ranged from wonder to outrage. Within a week of their bonding ceremony, Marcus and Sayalani found themselves at the HFY, center of a diplomatic storm that threatened to tear apart the fragile alliance between their species. "This is an abomination," declared Ambassador Harrison during an emergency session of the Human Colonial Council, his image flickering on the communications screen in Director Chen's office. "We sent our people to study alien cultures, not to contaminate themselves with them." Marcus felt Sayalani's pain through their bond as if it were his own, her anguish at being called a contaminant sharp as a blade through his consciousness. He squeezed her hand, sending waves of reassurance and love through their connection. "With respect, Ambassador," Marcus said, standing to address the screen. "What Sayalani and I have achieved represents the deepest possible understanding between our species. We haven't been contaminated. We've been enriched." "You've been compromised," snapped Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the lead xenopsychologist on the Colonial Council. "How can we trust your research now that you're telepathically linked to one of your subjects? Your objectivity is gone." "Our objectivity has been replaced by something better," Sayalani spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones that indicated deep emotion. "True understanding cannot come from distance and clinical observation. It comes from connection, from shared experience, from love." The human delegates exchanged uncomfortable glances. Director Chen, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the exchange, finally leaned forward. "The question before us," she said carefully, "is whether this development represents a breakthrough in interspecies relations or a dangerous precedent that could destabilize both our civilizations." Meanwhile, on the Verine homeworld of Ethros, the reaction was equally divided. Through their bond, Marcus could feel Sayalani experiencing the telepathic debates raging among her people, some viewing their union as a beautiful expansion of Verine consciousness, others as a dangerous dilution of their species' psychic purity. "They're afraid," Sayalani's mind voice whispered to him during one particularly heated council session. "Both our peoples are afraid of what we represent." "Change," Marcus replied through their link. "We represent change, and that's always terrifying." The pressure intensified when several prominent figures from both species called for their bond to be severed, a procedure that had never been attempted and would likely prove fatal to both of them. Protests erupted on Earth and Ethros, with some groups hailing Marcus and Sayalani as pioneers of a new age, while others denounced them as traitors to their respective species. It was during the darkest hour, when it seemed their love might become the catalyst for interstellar war, that an unexpected ally emerged. Dr. Kai Nakamura, a respected xenobiologist and Marcus's former mentor, arrived on Kepler-7 with a proposal that would change everything. "I've been studying the data from your bonding," Nakamura told them as they sat in the observation deck where their love had first taken flight. "The neurological changes, the telepathic resonance patterns, the way your brain chemistry has adapted. It's remarkable." "Remarkable enough to convince them we're not freaks of nature?" Marcus asked bitterly. Nakamura smiled. "Remarkable enough to prove that this is the next step in human evolution. Marcus, your brain scans show development in regions we've never seen activated before. You're processing information in ways that neither species has achieved independently. You two aren't just lovers. You're a proof of concept for what sentient life could become." Through their bond, Marcus felt Sayalani's sudden surge of hope. She leaned forward, her skin brightening with excitement. "You believe our union has scientific value beyond the personal?" "I believe," Nakamura said solemnly, "that you two have just shown us how to transcend the limitations that have kept intelligent species isolated throughout the galaxy." Working together, they prepared a comprehensive presentation that demonstrated the practical benefits of the human-Verine bond. Marcus's enhanced cognitive abilities allowed him to solve complex theoretical problems that had stumped researchers for years. Sayalani's connection to human emotional patterns had given her insights into consciousness that advanced Verine philosophy by centuries. Most importantly, their joint research had unlocked new understanding of the crystalline organisms from Kepler-7b. revealing them to be not just a collective consciousness but a form of life that could potentially serve as a bridge between different types of sentient minds. The tide began to turn when they presented their findings to a joint session of both governments. Standing before representatives of two worlds, Marcus and Sayalani spoke with one voice about the future they envisioned, not the erasure of species differences, but the celebration of them through bonds of understanding and love. "We are not asking you to abandon what makes you human or Vereen," Sayalani said, her luminescent skin pulsing with patterns that conveyed sincerity to her people, while her words reached the humans. "We are showing you that love can make us more than we ever dreamed possible. The universe is vast and full of wonders we can't even imagine," Marcus added, feeling Sayalani's thoughts harmonizing with his own. "But we don't have to face that vastness alone. We can reach across the void between worlds and find connection, find family, find love." The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was decisive. The Human Colonial Council and the Vereen Telepathic Assembly jointly declared the soul bond to be a legitimate form of interspecies alliance, opening the door for others to follow the path Marcus and Sayalani had blazed. 6 months later, as they stood once again in their favorite observation deck watching the stars wheel overhead, Marcus marveled at how much had changed. 3 more human Vereen couples had successfully bonded, and preliminary negotiations had begun with 2 other alien species about cultural exchange programs. "Do you ever regret it?" Sayalani asked, her mind voice warm with affection and just a hint of uncertainty. "Giving up your old life, becoming something new?" Marcus turned to her, seeing through their bond how beautiful she was to him, not just physically but in the depths of her soul where courage and love and infinite curiosity dwelt in perfect harmony. "Never," he said aloud, and through their psychic connection simultaneously. "I didn't give up my old life, love. I found my real one." As they kissed beneath the alien stars, their minds touching as intimately as their bodies, Marcus felt the truth of those words resonate through every fiber of his being. They had become living proof that love could indeed conquer all, even the vast emptiness between worlds. In the end, what had started as a simple question, "Would you like to go on a date?" had become the foundation for a new chapter in galactic history. And somewhere in the swirling dance of the cosmos, other species were beginning to wonder what wonders might await them if they too had the courage to reach across the stars and touch another soul. Their love had become a beacon, shining across the galaxy with a message as old as consciousness itself. No one has to be alone.